Hello, Sunshine. This is Mrs. Klein.
Hi guys, it's Miss Burkles.
We are here today with your Lesson 21 podcast entitled Chinese Discoveries and Inventions. You can find this or follow along with us on page 287 in your TCI book. As always, there's the guiding question, which is
How have medieval Chinese discoveries and inventions influenced the modern world? And we have our vocab for this lesson: gunpowder, inoculate, mass produce, and movable type.
all right, you guys, the introduction. Between about 200 and 1400 CE, the Chinese made many discoveries and inventions. Many of these advances occurred during the Tang and Sung dynasties, and the influence of these advancements is still evident today.
Over the centuries, Chinese scholars and scientists studied engineering, mathematics, science, and medicine, among other subjects. Their studies led to scientific and technological progress that was often far ahead of advances in the rest of the world.
All right. Section 1 is about exploration and travel. Several Chinese inventions made exploration and travel safer and faster, improving travel by sea. The Chinese developed the first compass as early as the 3rd century BCE. The first Chinese compasses were pieces of a magnetic mineral called lodestone.
Eventually, the Chinese replaced the lodestone with a steel needle because they learned that rubbing a needle with lodestone made the needle act in the same way as the lodestone. A needle and a compass gave a more accurate reading than a piece of lodestone.
By the time of the Sung dynasty, the Chinese were using magnetic compasses for navigation at sea. Additionally, the Chinese made sea travel safer by improving boat construction. By the by the 2nd century CE, they started building ships with separate watertight compartments. Modern shipbuilders still use this technique.
Improving travel on rivers, lakes, canals, and bridges. Within China, people often traveled by boat on rivers or across lakes. An innovation of a vessel called a paddle wheel boat made this type of travel much faster. The people powered paddle wheel boats allowed the Chinese to travel much faster on rivers and lakes and were also much easier to maneuver than other types of watercraft.
Another way the Chinese improved transportation was by developing a new type of canal lock during the Sung dynasty. The Chinese used canals extensively to connect the many rivers.
The Chinese also found ways to improve bridges. The new Chinese bridge used arches that were a smaller part or segment of a circle, making the bridges broader and flatter than semicircle arches could. Many cultures developed engineering technologies. However, the segmental arch bridge is one of China's most prized achievements.
All right, moving on to section 2, industry. Some Chinese advances led to new industries. By the 2nd century CE, the Chinese invented the art of papermaking. Papermaking became an important industry in China.
The invention of paper made another key development possible: printing. The printer first drew characters, symbols, on paper and then glued the paper to a wooden block. When the glue was dry, the printer carved out the wood around the characters, leaving the characters raised on the wood.
In the 11th century, during the Sung dynasty, the Chinese invented movable type, which consists of separate blocks for each character. Printers made their type by carving characters out of clay and baking them. To print, they selected the characters they needed and placed them in an iron frame in the order they would appear on the page.
Until the last century, all newspapers, books, and magazines were printed using movable type. Historians have discovered from written accounts that the Chinese have been drinking tea since at least 2700 BCE. However, by the 8th century CE, tea had become a hugely popular everyday beverage that was enjoyed throughout China.
During the Tang dynasty, the first tea plant seeds were brought to Japan, where tea cultivation developed into an industry by about 1200. Europeans became involved in tea farming and trade by the 18th century. Today, tea is one of the most popular beverages in the world, and as in ancient China, people now often drink tea for their health.
Another Chinese invention is a type of fine pottery called porcelain. Some historians believe that the Chinese produced the first porcelain as early as the 1st century CE. Porcelain making became a major industry in China. Hundreds of thousands of people worked to mass produce dishes, bowls, and vases.
Chinese porcelain became a prized item for trade. Okay, moving on to find out a little bit about steel. The first Chinese made steel a very useful metal before 200 BCE. Steel is made from iron, but it is less brittle than iron and easier to bend into different shapes.
The Chinese were the first to learn how to make cast iron by melting and molding iron ore. Later, they learned that blowing air into molten or melted cast iron causes a chemical reaction that creates steel, which is a great deal stronger than iron.
Today, iron and steel making are among China's most important industries.
Moving on to Section 3, military technology. During the Yuan and Mongol periods, the Chinese developed powerful weapons. The invention of gunpowder, one of the most significant inventions in history, made these weapons possible.
All right, the Chinese who first made gunpowder were alchemists, people who practiced a blend of science and magic known as alchemy. In 850 CE, during the Tang Dynasty, alchemists recorded a formula for gunpowder, but warned others to avoid it because it was extremely dangerous.
By the 10th century, the Chinese had developed the first weapon that used gunpowder, the flamethrower. By the early 1300s, travelers had brought the knowledge of gunpowder to Europe.
All right, rocket technology was developed in China during the Sung Dynasty. By 1300, rockets had spread through much of Asia and into Europe.
Do you ever play games with a deck of cards? If so, you are using a Chinese invention. Game cards were invented in China in about the 9th century, and today card games are played throughout the world.
The Chinese invented paper money in the late 8th or early 9th century. Before that time, coins were the only form of currency. Paper money is the most common form of currency in the world today.
The Chinese developed the first mechanical clock in about the 8th century. The Chinese improved the mechanical clock in 1092 during the Song dynasty. Europeans first developed mechanical clocks in the late 1200s. Modern day mechanical clocks are based on the same fundamental principles as early Chinese clocks.
All right, moving on to disease prevention. Chinese knowledge of medicine and disease prevention dates to ancient times. When an individual died from an infectious disease, the Chinese burned a chemical that released a poisonous smoke that they believed would destroy whatever was causing the illness. The poisonous smoke used by the Chinese was a type of disinfectant.
A Chinese monk recommended steaming the cloths of sick people or clothes of sick people because he believed that the steam would prevent others from becoming ill. The idea was sound because hot temperatures kill many germs.
Sometime around the 10th century, the Chinese discovered how to inoculate people against smallpox, a dreaded infectious disease. Chinese knowledge about smallpox inoculation eventually led to the development of drugs called vaccines. Modern medical professionals have developed vaccines for many diseases, including smallpox and the flu.
All right, for our lesson summary, we have exploration and travel. Several Chinese ideas improved travel and exploration. They include the magnetic compass, paddle wheel boats, canal locks, and segmental arch bridges.
All right, industry. Advances in papermaking and printing, including movable type, helped spread learning. Chinese porcelain became famous for its quality and beauty. The Chinese also discovered ways to make steel.
Military technology. The Chinese revolutionized military technology when they discovered how to use gunpowder to make powerful weapons. They also developed the first rockets.
All right, everyday objects. A number of Chinese inventions enriched people's everyday lives. Among them are game cards, paper money, and mechanical clocks.
Disease prevention. The Chinese also made great strides in medicine and disease prevention since they discovered how to stop the spread of disease by using disinfectants and steam. Inoculations were used to protect individuals from catching smallpox.
All right, you guys. So remember now we are back at the guiding question for lesson 21 about Chinese discoveries and inventions is how have medieval Chinese discoveries and inventions influenced the modern world?
And our vocab for this unit, gunpowder, inoculate, mass produce, and movable type.
I'm out.
See you later.